Hey, how you doing? Welcome to today's lesson. In the previous video, I showed you completing the square without an a value. Now I'm going to show you completing the square with an a value. It's a small little change. So, completing the square with an a value. Okay. Now an a value means that in the general form of a quadratic, I've got ax squared plus bx plus c. When I say with an a value, I mean that this is not 1. Okay? If it's 1, then I don't write it in there, and completing the square is more straightforward. If it isn't 1, then we have to do one extra step. So, e.g., write 2, I'm going to use y, because we get so caught up with x's that we forget the y's sometimes. 2y squared minus 12y minus 5 in completing the square form. Okay, now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just like I did with completing the square, I'm just going to look at just the variable part. Just that part. Forget the minus 5 for now, I'll deal with them in a second. Okay, so I've got 2y squared minus 12y. That's just the variable part. And I want to first get this into completing the square, then I'll deal with the 5. The only issue with this is that I now don't have a 1 there. Completing the square only works if the leading term of the quadratic is 1. Okay. So, how do I make this a 1? I take out a common factor. Alright, so I can take out a common factor of 2. It's nice because that's even, so it'll work out nicely. If it's not even, then we have a horrible fraction that we have to deal with, but that only gets more and more advanced as you go. Once you have the idea, it's only the numbers that can become more difficult. Okay, so if I pull out a 2, then what am I left with? I'm left with y squared minus 6y. Okay, factorization by this stage of your life shouldn't be an issue. Okay, if you're watching this, factorization should be easy. Okay, so that's there. I've pulled out that 2. Now I've got a leading term of 1 by the quadratic. Okay, so now I can factorize, I can complete the square on this like I did in the previous video. So I've got this 2, and in here I've got y, same sign, half of that, 3, squared, and I have to correct for half of that squared, right? So 3 squared is 9, I have to correct for the 9, okay? You with me? Now all I do is I distribute back that 2. So I've got 2y minus 3 squared minus 2 times 9 is 18, okay? So all that I've done there is I've said, you need to go back there and back to there. Are you with me? Now, this is the completed the square part on the variable. So all that I have to do now is plug in that minus 5 and tidy stuff up. So I've got 2y minus 3 squared minus 18. There's the variables. There's the y's. Plus 5. Oh, sorry, not plus 5. I said plus 5. I meant minus 5. Minus 5. Are you with me? So that's all I do. Variable is the red part, minus 5. And we just tidy everything up. So if it stays 2, y minus 3 squared, negative 18 minus 5, so negative 18 and negative 5, there's negative 23, negative 23. Yeah, done. Alright, piece of cake, huh? The only tricky thing, the only new thing, is this idea of pulling out a common factor to make that 1. Are you with me? It doesn't work if that is not 1. You can't do this of half b squared. Right. Fantastic. Let's take a look at what this tells us. Just very, very quickly. Okay. So the next part of the notes I said there, what is the minimum value for that? So what is the minimum value, right, for that equation that we had, 2y squared minus 12y minus 5. Okay, well this, right, this is also this option here, y minus 3 squared minus 23. They're the same thing. Okay, we just did that. We changed that to that. We didn't change the value of it. We just changed the way it looks. It's still the same thing. If you had to multiply this out, okay, square the brackets, distribute the 2, tidy up in that negative 23, you would get back to this. You should try it. It's a good exercise to do. Okay. So they say, okay, well, what's the minimum value for this? Well, the minimum value for this is when that is 0. Okay. The minimum value for any squared number, okay, so for anything where that is squared, the least value of this is where this equals to 0. Right? It can never equal -1 because if I square a bracket, it will always be positive. If I put -5 in here, -5 squared is 25. -1 in here, -1 squared is 1. Okay? Whatever you put in here, as soon as you square it, will always be bigger than 0. So the least I can get, the smallest influence this can give, is 0. Right? You with me? So the smallest influence is when the bracket equals 0. You still with me? Okay. So this means that the minimum input that this can possibly add, this whole thing, is when this is 0. And when is that 0? That is 0 when y minus 3 equals 0, right? From inside the brackets, that. So when y equals positive 3. That's the minimum value when y equals positive 3. Well, what will then be the minimum value of the whole thing if y is positive 3? Well, you've got two choices. You can either understand that I made this bracket 0, so that's all 0, so that's equals -23, or you can plug it back in. 2 times by 3, alright, squared minus 12 times by 3 minus 5. And I guarantee you that that equals -23. Okay, so what is the minimum value of this that could possibly be? Well, when y equals -3, that equals -23. This then leads us on to, if this was x's, looking at what the turning point could be. And this is one of the reasons why the turning point, if you've gone ahead to turning point before, is the opposite sign of what's in the bracket. Okay, that's why sometimes the general form is of a different, it's x minus p, close bracket squared plus q. But you just have to understand the theory with that. Okay, alright, pretty straightforward. The only thing I've really done that's amazing here, I think it's amazing, is take out a common factor here, so the leading term is 1. Just remember, you can't complete the square if the leading term is not 1. Okay, go practice some more of this. There's more on the blog, more on the channel, and remember, I'm here for you.